Welcome to the Chaos Sector. We return to the Matrix. Recently, there was something that caught our attention in the newsfeed, and it's from the state of Idaho. You know, Idaho was previously known for their potatoes, but it seems there's a lot more going on than just smashing potatoes. We posted this in our community board and questioned if this was a copycat killer. We'll break that down later on, but let's look into the report. Quote, Boise, Idaho. The family of Benjamin Naylor, the man arrested in connection with the quadruple homicide in south-central Idaho earlier this month, is speaking out about Naylor's former encounters with law enforcement. Kayla McCarr, one of Naylor's daughters, told KTVB in a phone interview that her father struggled with his mental health for years, including suffering from schizophrenia. As mothers, wives, daughters, granddaughters ourselves, it is unfathomable to imagine something so horrific taking place and losing a loved one in such a tragic way. Our hurts and thoughts will forever be with every life touched by this terrible loss. His daughters shared a statement on Facebook Thursday, July 10th. As daughters, we feel that our father finally lost his lifelong battle with a very severe mental illness that has plagued him and our family throughout most of his life. Okay, so he had a severe mental illness and was just walking around untreated? Where were the doctors? Why isn't there a therapist involved here? McCarr told KTVB that when she learned of last week's incidents, she was frustrated because she had asked law enforcement to take Naylor's weapons away years ago. She said if they had it, might have been able to prevent the killings that Naylor is accused of committing. Now, you see, this is the element of a psychological operation we spoke about. Things don't add up here. There is absolutely no way that a mentally ill individual would be able to own firearms. Did they have medical records to prove he was diagnosed with schizophrenia? Was he admitted at any point during that lifelong battle with his severe mental illness? There has to be some documentation out there, right? Nevertheless, let's continue. In late summer or early fall of 2021, two alarming incidents prompted McCarr to seek help for her father, Naylor. The first incident, McCarr said Naylor entered Minidoka Memorial Hospital claiming there were bugs on him, and he was demanding immediate medical attention. When told to wait, McCarr said officers told her that Naylor flashed a gun at hospital staff before leaving. Are you kidding me? You know what? Let's continue before my brain cells explode. No, wait, let's address this very incident. McCarr stated that officers, that's right, officers, told her that Naylor flashed a gun at hospital staff before leaving. So was he arrested from his threat? Possession of a firearm, terroristic threat charge, claiming bugs were crawling on his skin. He's officially a lunatic, right? And he has a firearm as well. He would have been admitted into a psychiatric facility, and if he ever got out, he most definitely wouldn't be able to possess a firearm again. It's outrageous. Again, the officers told his daughter he flashed a gun at hospital staff, but I guess they were spectators and not law enforcement throwing him in jail. Yep. How would law enforcement know he flashed a gun at hospital staff? Oh, that's right, they called the cops. Did they review surveillance to confirm this claim by hospital staff? Let's assume they did. So once they reviewed surveillance and obtained a physical description, did they track him down? There's a blank spot in the report that doesn't provide details about this specific incident, and that's why it becomes more and more unrealistic. But there's more. Quote, around the same time frame, Naylor also called 911 on his mother with whom he lives, according to McCarr, saying his mother was poisoning his food. McCarr said Rupert police officers told her that law enforcement responded to these incidents and each time asked Naylor if he was a danger to himself or others. What the hell is this? The officers asked the crazed lunatic if he was a danger to himself or others? You know what? I'm done. This is just...
Can we also throw law enforcement and jail right along with Naylor for being some of the most corrupt officers in the history of law enforcement? This is absolute madness. Why would you ask a mentally ill individual who you know is off his rocker, by the way, why would you ask this person if they are a danger to themselves or others? What, so you think asking them for their honest opinion, it would determine your decision to confiscate their guns and haul them off to the nut house? Oh, let me guess. If they state they're not a danger to themselves and others, well, seems honest to me, Johnson. No danger here. 10-4, let's move on. Then he goes on to shoot a staff member at the hospital who wouldn't help get the creepy crawlers off his skin. This does not make any sense whatsoever. Officers would have confiscated his gun, threw him in handcuffs, and dumped him off into the mental institution. He would be classified as a bipolar schizophrenic, extreme levels of psychosis and paranoia, flat out. You're not asking Naylor if he's dangerous. Think about it. Put that into context. Imagine the setting. Officers respond to a call where Naylor is at his mother's home. He's suffering from extreme paranoia. Officers arrive. They're notified by his family that he is not mentally stable and has firearms in the home. Now, what do you think will happen in this scenario? Well, the first thing that will happen is Naylor will definitely be showing signs of psychosis because of his claims of being poisoned. Officers are trained to detect mental illnesses, although many think are not equipped to deal with it. Sure, they're not technically trained to deal with it, but they definitely can spot someone who is suffering from a mental illness. Now, don't forget, you have the previous incident where he flashed a gun at hospital staff, remember? And it was law enforcement who notified his daughter about that, not the other way around. So officers are fully aware of this mentally unstable individual and yet are asking him if he's a danger? Yeah, he threatened to shoot hospital staff. I think that means he's pretty damn dangerous. I guess not. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Psych. Quote, each time Naylor said no, according to McCarr, officers moved on, McCarr said. So Naylor denied being a danger to himself and others, and officers did exactly what we claimed they did. 10-4, let's move on. Instead of asking him if he's dangerous, why didn't they ask if he was on any medication? You see? Oh, the report wouldn't include this inquiry because that would determine if he would have his guns confiscated and admitted to the nut house. In fact, that question is protocol for law enforcement. This is how they establish if the individual in question has any, quote, psychological impairments or deficiencies. It's so blatantly bonkers, damn near comical to the chaos at this point. Quote, they should have seen clear signs of delusion, and instead nothing was done, McCarr said. McCarr said shortly after the incidents, she contacted Rupert PD twice with 2 requests: take Naylor's weapons away from him and help get him admitted to a hospital for mental health treatment. Each time she received the same answer of if he's not a danger to himself or others, there's nothing we can do and he has a right to keep his weapons, McCarr told KTVB. Oh my fucking, this is one of the most derptastic reports we've covered, and there have been some doozies. If he's not a danger to himself and others, how can you determine this? By asking Naylor? He's insane. Of course he'll say he's not a danger. Then, after you idiots leave the home, he goes on to shoot his mother in cold blood because he felt she was trying to kill him by poisoning his mashed potatoes. Yeah, we're being a bit brutal here because this is astonishing.
Let's try to get through this. Quote, each time she received the same answer of, if he's not a danger to himself or others, there's nothing we can do and he has a right to keep his weapons, McCarr told KTVB. But wait a minute. If officers notified the family that he threatened hospital staff with a gun, how is this... Okay, let me walk through this very slowly. If officers notified the family of this threat, then this means he should have been arrested. And that arrest results in either stiff prison time or stiff time in the psych ward. Because for one, this is a terroristic threat, which carries a very serious charge, my friends. Threatening to assault someone is common in society, but threatening to shoot someone is deemed a threat upon someone's life or multiple lives. This is why terroristic threats are taken very seriously. The threat to public safety can be cataclysmic. Naylor flashes a gun at hospital staff one night, goes unchecked, then comes back the next day and shoots 5 staff members. Now keep in mind, officers are aware of this potential threat, and somehow Naylor isn't tracked down and admitted into a psych ward.
The response Makar got from law enforcement reflects Idaho's legal framework around firearms and mental health intervention. 19 states have red flag laws that allow temporary gun removal when someone poses a danger, even without a criminal conviction. Idaho is chosen not to enact such laws. Additionally, under Idaho law, unless someone voluntarily admits themselves to a hospital or is deemed an immediate danger, there is no legal pathway to force mental health treatment. But again, law enforcement notified Naylor's family that he flashed a gun at hospital staff. He came into the hospital yapping about bugs crawling on his skin, was told to wait for service, and then flashed a gun at staff upon leaving. Now, where in the hell does law enforcement come into this picture? Because whenever they came into the picture, Naylor was deemed a danger to himself and others based on his actions, and officers notified his family, so they knew about him prior to the poisoned mashed potatoes. If they knew of him previously, when they arrived at the home, he would have definitely been hauled off to the psych ward. Well, I guess the state of Idaho doesn't really take the oath of protect and serve seriously. This is a failure to the community and the people who suffer from illness. You can say that again. This is a failure to the community and the people who suffer from illness. Law enforcement in Idaho seems to have a major problem with upholding the law. What's in those damn potatoes? Fentanyl?
The family later in 2021 got Naylor hospitalized through their own efforts. He received treatment for about 2 months before being released on medication. He was doing better than I'd ever seen him, Makar said. Naylor remained stable for nearly 3 years, but over recent months, Makar said it appeared his mental state may have slipped, and she was not sure if Naylor was still taking his medication. Oh, how convenient! Apparently hadn't been admitted prior, before or after the gun flashing incident, nor before or after the poisoned mashed potatoes incident. Yeah, because both incidents involve law enforcement. Nevertheless, if you receive a call from a man claiming his mother is trying to poison his food, wouldn't you assume this is not a normal circumstance? Surely there is either merit to that man's claim or he's insane. The point, law enforcement would not walk away from that scenario like there was a noise disturbance complaint. He would have been arrested or institutionalized prior to being treated and medicated later on. But, he agrees to the help and then, just snaps and murders 4 people. Now, it wasn't 4 people all at once, like the Koberger case, but he allegedly murdered 4 people, so, let's dig into the investigation.
This is definitely one for the ages. Quote, Rupert, Idaho. Court documents reveal new details about the investigation into 4 alleged homicides in Cassia and Minidoka, Idaho counties on Tuesday. Benjamin Roy Naylor, 56, is charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and an enhancement for the use of a deadly weapon in the commission of a felony, after investigators say he killed 4 people. On Tuesday, about 3:30 p.m., an officer with the Rupert Police Department was called to respond to a home for a report of an unattended death that occurred under suspicious circumstances, according to police reports. When he arrived, he learned an adult woman had been found dead in the northwest bedroom of the home with at least 1 gunshot wound to the head. Her identity has not been released. Detectives were able to find doorbell camera footage from the home, which reportedly showed a white man with a darker mustache and light beard, wearing a black full-brimmed hat, a camouflage print jacket, a dark-colored t-shirt with the multicolored logo, black shorts, white socks, and light-colored tennis shoes, ringing the doorbell and being greeted and allowed into the home at 1:34 p.m. Okay, now the first investigative element here is that he was greeted by someone and allowed inside. So this means he knew this individual or individuals who resided in the home. Just wanted to point that out. Sure would have helped if there was Ring doorbell camera footage from 1122 King Road, but According to court documents, the man also had a yellow glove on his left hand, and his right hand was holding a firearm tucked under his jacket on the left side of his body. The video reportedly shows the same man leaving the home at approximately 1:51 p.m. He then walked west down a cement pathway until the camera stopped recording. Okay, so it appears this is premeditated murder. This woman was targeted by Naylor, who was a part of a group that he had issues with. According to court documents, investigators with the Cassia County Sheriff's Office responded to an address in Burley on Tuesday, a few hours later, about 6:21 p.m., for a report of 2 people who had been shot. When they arrived, deputies and detectives searched the home, reportedly finding a 66-year-old man, later identified as Kelly Jinks, lying dead on the floor of the living room with a gunshot wound to the head. Soon after, deputies also located a deceased 62-year-old woman, later identified as Donna Jinks, inside a closet near the back of the house. The woman also had a gunshot wound to the head. Deputies reportedly found video footage from earlier afternoon showing a gold 2013 Toyota Tundra pull against the curb across the street from the residence. A man reportedly got out of the driver's seat and walked into the home where the dead bodies were later found. Detectives were shown a photo of the Rupert homicide suspect that had been caught on a video doorbell and determined to be Naylor. Now, at this point, Naylor has murdered 3 people, but prior to these murders, officers notified his family he was at the hospital flashing a freaking gun at the staff. Yes, don't forget that key information. Puts this all into perspective. Because if law enforcement knew he had a firearm and had threatened the hospital staff, then he would have been arrested. Wouldn't have been free to then call 911 about the weird taste of his mother's mashed potatoes. It's difficult to report on this case. I'm losing my patience.
If you're flashing a gun at hospital staff, you're getting a knock on the door by law enforcement, because that gold Toyota Tundra would have been tracked down. The same way law enforcement examined the ring door camera footage and tracked Naylor down, he would have been tracked down prior, after his manic episode at the hospital. But I guess he didn't show any signs of a danger to himself and others, so no need. At 10:04 p.m., a Lincoln County Sheriff's deputy found the Tundra near the intersection of South Greenwood Street and State Route 24 in Shoshone. The deputy followed the Tundra northbound on State Route 75 while waiting for additional officers and then initiated a traffic stop. The driver was identified as Naylor, and he was wearing a light-colored woodland camouflage jacket, a black Steve Miller Bank t-shirt, and black shorts. Interesting, don't you think? They initiated a traffic stop to do a little covert investigating. Hey? Sounds familiar? Yep, this is exactly what happened to Brian Kohberger. There's a difference, though, a huge difference.
According to police reports, Naylor had a 1911-style handgun strapped to himself inside a shoulder holster. He was transported to the Mini Cassia Criminal Justice Center, where he is being held without bond. Court documents said detectives interviewed Naylor, but the court sealed the interview details, making them unavailable to the public. Okay, they're shifting the timeline of events in this article. Upon the traffic stop, they discovered the handgun. But then it goes on to say he was transported to the Criminal Justice Center and is held without bond. But that's not the next step in the timeline of events. It was the detective interviews, you see. And the reason they didn't put that in chronological order is due to him being questioned about the murders, which has been sealed by the court. Yes, try to hide the details of what corrupt dealings were being carried out in the interview. When he was stopped, they discovered the handgun, but they do not specify at this point if he was brought in for questioning. It skips on to him being transported to the Justice Center and held without bond. It does not explain that law enforcement had identified the killer and then proceeded to arrest and charge him with the murders. See, it's these details that create oddities. And then it states that he was interviewed by detectives about the murders, but of course that's sealed by the court. Was he arrested upon that traffic stop? Was he arrested after being questioned? We actually don't know because of the fragmented timeline of events. What if he was released after being questioned and murdered someone else?
Well, let's see if that happened. After Naylor's interview, police reports say deputies were asked to check the area near Connor's Cafe, located at 339 South, 600 West in Hyburn. Deputies reportedly found a 2010 Ford Expedition parked behind the building with a deceased man inside. His age and identity have not been revealed. This is very vague. Was it Naylor who led them to his 4th victim? Or was it someone near the area and spotted the deceased man in the truck? In one scenario, he's already in custody for the other homicides and just confessed to the known murders at that point and informs them of the fourth one. I'm assuming this is what has been sealed by the court. Or, in the other scenario, Naylor was questioned and then released, in which he goes on to murder the fourth victim. Mind you, the other three murders have time frames provided, such as when the bodies were discovered and then reported to authorities. The fourth victim, though, was investigated after Naylor had been interviewed. We can suggest he may have led them to the fourth victim, but there's no guarantee. The police report states that deputies were asked to check the area near the cafe, but it doesn't specify by who, though. Who informed deputies to search that area? None of this really matters because Naylor would have already been arrested prior for waving a gun in the hospital, so it's not that important.
So Naylor was brought in for questioning, something Kohberger wasn't allotted the opportunity to do. And the crazy thing here is Naylor has more visual evidence that proves he was either involved in the murders or was the murderer, based on the camera footage. Yet he was given the opportunity to come in and be questioned. Let me guess. They asked him if he was a danger to any of those victims, and he said no. 10-4. Let's move on. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Naylor. Sorry for the hassle.
You see, this is the nonsense we expose. Either it be real or fake. The corruption, the deception, all of it is designed to manipulate the public.
A preliminary hearing for Naylor will be held in Cassia County on July 18 and in Minidoka County on July 23rd. If convicted, Naylor could face the death penalty. Yep, he's toast. You have the double-edged sword theory here.
Either law enforcement enabled this to happen, allowing a maniac to roam around flashing guns at hospital staff, which they notified his family about. That is a very disturbing point because officers at some point would have contacted his family about the incident. 10-4, he's not a threat to himself or anyone. He has the legal right to wave a gun around in the freaking hospital, threatening the lives of individuals. Yeah, that wasn't dangerous. Then the same maniac calls the cops himself, claiming his mother poisoned his mashed potatoes, and they never thought this individual was a threat? Despite the family notifying them he was mentally unstable and possessed several weapons? In both incidents, law enforcement is aware of Naylor's mental state and the guns he possessed in that mental state. Then, sometime later, he goes on to shoot 3 individuals, is brought in for questioning, despite law enforcement knowing he was the primary suspect at the scene of the crime, yet released him. Yeah, can picture the interview. Mr. Naylor, did you murder those individuals? Naylor responds, no, sir, I would never harm anyone. They were my friends. Okay, I think we got everything we needed. Have a nice day. Is released, then goes on to murder his 4th victim. In this scenario, he's obviously being allowed to terrorize the communities, right? Or, the more likely scenario, it's not real. Pick your poison here. The results are in and, well, we conclude this isn't real. And it's mimicking a prior quadruple homicide that happened in the same state. And that case also appears questionable as well. You'll never get the same infamy as Kohberger, buddy. Nice try, though.
Some have stated that our claim of this being a copycat killer was not the same. It was an older man, older victims, and he was mentally unstable. First of all, the age of the killer and the victims do not matter. Second, Kohberger would also be mentally unstable in the belief he murdered 4 college students. 1 killer in both cases, and both have 4 victims. Both deemed quadruple homicides in the state of Idaho. That classifies as a copycat killer in our book. Whatever, I guess. Money. Something that drives humans to compromise their integrity. No one was harmed in the production of this psychological operation, so just participate. There's nothing to feel ashamed of. Come on, just agree to the experiment. Quote, A GoFundMe has been started for the victims of the Burley homicides, saying the Jenks were loving parents, devoted grandparents, and cherished members of their community. Well, seems there's a level of greed here. You're already being paid to participate in the psychological operation, and now you want people to donate to the families of the victims in the psychological operation? But check out the disclaimer from the website. Found this interesting. KSL.com does not assure that the money deposited to the account will be applied for the benefit of the persons named as beneficiaries. If you are considering a deposit to the account, you should consult your own advisors and otherwise proceed at your own risk. Simply amazing. Hey, there's no assurance that the money you donate to the GoFundMe for the grieving families will actually be applied to the cause. Translation. Hey, it's up to you if you emotionally bind yourself to this psychological operation. Okay, in conclusion, this was a copycat killer case used to somewhat give the previous quadruple homicide case credibility. Let me explain. That case went through 3 psychological stages. First, many assumed Kohberger was the killer. Second, it became evident that he had been framed. And lastly, due to how absurd the case was, including the recent plea deal, doubts about if the case was even real has crept into the minds of the public. So, another quadruple homicide was drummed up, another quadruple homicide in the same state of Idaho. If everyone thought the Kohberger case was absurd, the Naylor case is not even registering in the human brain as information to be processed as possible. The brain flatlines immediately. Psychology is the greatest tactic used to control the public. Keep this in mind the next time there's a report of a tragedy. This is the chaos sector.